Okay, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is The Wealthy Educator with another episode of The Wealthy Educator. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and this dialogue today with Jeff and Kelly from Fire Around the World. They have a really great story to tell. I'll tell a little bit about them, then I'll let them talk about themselves. So they are a 32 and 35-year-old couple. They're really big in the travel hacking. At the current time, they're on their way to financial independence, and they have been to 51 countries and 50 states. I really do look forward to hearing that. And the most, I think, outstanding part of their story at the current time is that they have a $909,000 net worth. I really want to hear about how they did that. So right now, I would like to welcome Jeff and Kelly with Fire Around the World. How are you all doing today?
Thank you.
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Hey, I'm excited about this conversation. So why don't you tell, the current viewers and the viewers who will upload this video later, why don't you tell us about yourselves?
Go ahead. You want to start?
Sure. So I'm Kelly, and we both live in Nebraska now. I'm not from here originally. I'm from Massachusetts. So it's been interesting, actually, how that's played a role in our finances, because Nebraska and Massachusetts have very different cost of living in those two states. So that's one of the things that has kept me here in Nebraska right now is the low cost of living, and just how easy it was to get a job here after school and be able to pay off my loans while living at such a low level. So that's played a big role in our finances. And really during the pandemic is when we've jumped into everything fire related and personal finance. We figured we've got this time here at home. We might as well start learning about all the things that we can. So we've been really enjoying learning about all of that over the last year.
Gotcha. And what about you, Jeff? You have anything else to add?
I'm Jeff, engineer by career and education. I am actually born and raised here in Nebraska, so I guess my cost of living has always been the same. But undoubtedly, as Kelly and I have gone through, of course, we're married now, and we've gone through our relationship. Finances, financial wealth, all of those topics have always been at the forefront of our conversations. Well, we have many conversations, but that's one of them, as we both are definitely vested and interested in the finance realm of our lives and taking control of it. So, for me, it's been much the same as Kelly said, which is a journey really under the financial independence, retire early here, really having a concerted effort towards focusing on that here in the last few recent years. But undoubtedly, the principles behind it were something that both of us were doing already ahead of getting in the movement itself.
Awesome. And so you said you're an engineer. How long have you been doing that?
Oh, let's see. Been out of school here for about 11 years. So about a decade under my belt.
And what about you, Kelly? What's your career?
I work as vice president of operations for a software development company here in Nebraska. So we do all custom mobile apps, things like that.
Okay. And how long have you all been married?
Very short. This would be 8 months? No.
8-9 months.
8-9 months.
Like
Yeah. So
things have changed multiple times on that because of COVID. So that's why it's a little hard to figure it out. But we ended up eloping last year, thanks to all of our plans having to move, and hoping to celebrate later this year with everybody all together.
Okay. I noticed a big word there, elope. I think that's so that's an awesome word, because I tell people all the time, hey, what's not important is the actual wedding, but the marriage itself.
It was not what we were planning originally, but it was perfect. It was awesome, and cost a fraction of a real wedding too. So
definitely.
Well, and speaking of frugality, it's so Colorado is one of 2 states where you can marry yourself. So we just went, on a mountainside. We actually did have our parents and siblings there as well, but that was it. We did kind of our own thing. It was very intimate. It was a really great time. Like Kelly said, wouldn't change it for the world. But come back to the frugality and show up to the clerk house in Aspen, Colorado, and say, pay 35s. Here's a stamp. Here's your certificate. You guys are married. See you later.
Well, that's awesome. You all have a great story. So here's the deal, right? So, anytime we talk about financial freedom, financial independence, I always tell people that the number one thing that you have to do in order to become financially independent is to get out of debt. So can you share, your debt-free journey? Like, obviously you're an engineer, so people would assume that you had quite a bit of student loan debt. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. So luckily, come from a middle-class family, and luckily had support of my parents, not just emotionally, physically, whatever, but financially as well. So they help subsidize, some of the cost of going to college. But undoubtedly, through that, them helping out, as well as scholarships. And then lastly, student loans, of course. Yeah, came out with a decent chunk, but fortunately less than I'd say the average person.
It was what, like 25?
About 30,000 in total.
Okay.
for myself. Yeah, to speak directly numbers. So in a 4-year degree, that's a drop in the bucket these days. But so fortunately, between all those three things, came out, but still, of course, had a chunk of money ahead of me. So that was one of my main focuses at the start of my career, was throw money at the student loans. So my goal was debt free by age 30, and overall achieve that, hit it well above that by just really focusing and budgeting and saying, what can I throw everything at my student loans? So for me, that was number one. Then paying off the car. At the time, I didn't have a house investment, so in mid 20s, became debt free for me, and that's of course been the goal ever since, to keep it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you were debt free in the mid 20s, and I'm assuming that was prior to meeting Kelly, correct?
It was, yeah. So we started dating in 2018. So yeah, it'd been a couple years prior to that where I'd been debt free, and like I said, it was a goal that I set and really worked towards. But back to what you said, it was kind of for me the foundation for not really just financial independence, retire early, the FIRE thing, just the base for me to be able to help dictate my life, and to be able to start to build some wealth, and have some expendable money to be able to start with investing and focus on those sorts of efforts. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so were you both? So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me that both of you are kind of, when you met, you were both kind of established as far as money is concerned. It wasn't one spouse trying to pull the other one in the same direction and then having a reluctant spouse. Am I correct?
That is correct. We are very much on the same line as far as finances go, which is, I don't know that that's always very common, that we have just the exact same places we like to spend our money on: travel and on giving and donating to different organizations. And we like to be very frugal in pretty much all of the other areas. So thankfully that lined up really well. But my background was a little bit different than Jeff's. So I actually had been married once before. And at the end of that relationship, there was a lot of financial infidelity going on. So while I did have student loan debt, and I paid my own way through grad school as well, a lot of the debt I had to pay off was actually from my previous husband for credit cards and loans and things like that I didn't know existed. So when we met, we were both established, but I was kind of starting over again, I guess you could say, as I was coming out of that. And thankfully I had enough financial education and background that I still had an okay emergency fund in place, and I still had a little bit in my 401k and things like that, but was kind of starting new, debt free, but didn't have a lot going yet.
Okay, you brought up a very interesting term, which was financial infidelity.
Yes.
And people don't realize, cheating infidelity isn't the number one cause of divorce. It's actually finances and financial infidelity. Why don't you explain that a little bit more? Because when we talk about my wife and I, we've been married almost 16 years.
Wow.
We haven't always been on the same page with money. There were times when she felt like she was being constrained, and I was too tight over the budget. But I'm the one who, she's the free spirit, I'm the nerd. So I would go to bed every night, literally losing sleep over our finances.
Oh man.
Yeah, drowning in debt. So I'm like, so now I have to be this czar over the finances, over the budget. And I might have committed financial infidelity at times where I hide money here to pay debt off. It wasn't anything where I was trying to be sneaky as far as negative things. I was trying to be positive, but that's still financial infidelity. Sometimes I see these stories on Choose FI on the Facebook page of a wife who is secretly putting away retirement money for the spouse. He doesn't even know, because he's so irresponsible with money. So why don't we go? And now I read one story a couple of weeks ago where they're millionaires, but the husband doesn't even know they're millionaires.
Oh wow!
It is absolutely insane. So even people in that thread were like, "Hey, this is not cool. You need to talk." So, but I understand where she's coming from in a way. Like, I think, hey, if you have a really irresponsible spouse, you got to do what you have to do. But kind of like Dave Ramsey says, you need to sit down and have these mature conversations with your spouse. So why don't you tell us a little bit, if you don't mind sharing, about the financial infidelity piece?
Yeah. Well, it was one thing that we talked about actually very early on in our relationship. And thankfully we're both pretty open, honest people in that sense, but definitely believed in the transparency around that issue. So yeah, we literally sat down and shared our real numbers of, okay, you know, what debt did you pay off? What did you pay off? How much do you have in retirement? How much do I have? You know, what are you making? What's your mortgage payment? What's your rent? Like, we went through all of that within, I don't know, the first couple months. That was just the first date, so yeah. No, not the first date. But within the first couple of months, we did. And a lot of that was obviously very important to me from my past experience as well. But in my case, it was a lot of spending on things that I know was going on. So being at work and getting a phone call from creditors letting me know, hey, you're, you know, this many $1,000s past due on this credit. I'm sitting there like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I'm running into a meeting with a client. Like, I have no idea, you know, what this is for. So a lot of things like that, there was a lot of other issues at play there as well in my situation, but at the end of the day, it did have a lot of financial impact there of needing to constantly feel like I'm just always catching up. You know, we get an income, and at that point, I was actually the only one working. I was supporting my husband, who was sort of going through school and working odd jobs here and there, but I was the primary earner at the time. And yeah, just seeing all the paychecks go right out the door as soon as we get them, because he's got something else he's spending money on and things like that. So I am actually very active now as a volunteer advocating for abuse victims, and awesome. Financial abuse being one of those. So if there is anybody out there that's wanting more information and details on it, feel free to reach out, because I work on this stuff all the time. But the one thing I would say is laws vary a lot from state to state in how to handle those situations. But here in Nebraska, the way it worked was once you're married, any debt that is incurred while married is responsible to be paid by both parties. So even if he had taken that debt out without me knowing, because we were married at the time, I was also responsible for paying it back. So one of the first steps I ended up taking, well, after about 4 years, it wasn't immediate, but after a while, I ended up filing for a legal separation, because once you have that in place, then you're no longer responsible for each other's finances. So that is a good option just to throw out there if people are kind of trying to figure out what to do in that situation. But again, I'm not a legal expert, and it does vary a lot by where you live, so it can change.
That's great information, because we had a panel discussion the other night about finances, and we started talking about, you know, obviously couples finances. But one question that I did have from someone that we didn't get to was, you know, how to prepare for a divorce and how should you do a prenup and things like that. And honestly, when you have 5 married men on the call who are happily married, it's hard to have that discussion. Yeah. So we were like, hey, I'll save that for another episode or something.
Yeah. I've done a couple of really good partnership posts on that on our Instagram page of some of the basic steps to take if you're feeling like that might be the road that you're going down. Some things like making sure you have copies of legal documentation of, you know, passports and birth certificates and bank accounts, and making sure you open up your own separate bank account and lots of things like that. So I do actually have a step-by-step kind of checklist on there if people need it.
So is that something that you do once you get married and then you see things might be going south, or is that something you would do period? Like, even if you go into the marriage with great intentions and you're happily married, you still recommend that?
Good question. No, I don't. We actually don't have, I don't think we ever joined any of our bank accounts.
Technically, no.
No, but not out of any particular reason. Our investment accounts are joint. Yeah, I don't really feel strongly one way or the other on having joint accounts versus your own separate ones. So no, those sorts of steps I would say would be more if you're getting ready to leave and make that move, I would do that. But some people are just more comfortable having their own separate finances and splitting everything down the center and making sure each party is paying for things. And if that works for you, then I say that works for you. That's just not particularly what we do.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And since we're on the topic of marriage and finances, I guess what we will talk about, you know, obviously I look at it, personal finance as being personal, right? So you can look at these cookie cutter programs, and I love Dave Ramsey's program. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be where we are today. But obviously, you know, he says put everything in one pot, and we do put everything in one pot, but we each have our little blow accounts where we put a certain amount of money in there each month. I know my wife needs a little more than me, but it doesn't matter if I make 100,000 or 150,000 a year, and she makes 60 or 70,000 a year. It's in our particular situation, what works for us is that it's our money, and we each take a little bit off the top to kind of blow it without the other spouse saying, hey, what are you spending this money on? So that's how we do it. And I do appreciate the fact that you said, hey, y'all are just like whatever, y'all have separate accounts and your investment accounts and what y'all have joint. So tell us how you go about budgeting, how you go about planning. Do you have one meeting a week, one meeting a month? How does that work?
Yeah, I'd say so. Ours is pretty organic these days. I mean, we've set up front. We've really latched onto some specific tools that Kelly can talk about because she really manages those. So I won't try to steal her thunder there. But undoubtedly, we latch onto specific tools and we use those and we really set specific budgets and what we're trying to do and where we're trying to spend it and where we're trying to save and that sort of thing. And really, it's the zero-based budgeting that I'm sure Kelly will cover. But undoubtedly, our conversations are much more impromptu. They are undoubtedly when it comes in month end and we're looking at budgets and seeing where we are. There's maybe some more frequency of that. But it's really, I'd say, day-to-day involving in the conversation. We're not sitting there at the dinner table and saying, okay, tell me your dollars today type of thing. But it's really organic. It's, hey, I have this purchase coming up or those types of things, but we do have discretionary funds that we set for each of ourselves, similar to it sounds like you do with your blow funds with your wife. And that's really important too, because we have a budget for everything, but for ourselves and any maybe more wants than needs, that's where those discretionary budgets come in. So
yeah, I would say, when we first dove into all this, it was very time intensive and there was a lot of talking and a lot of conversations and tracking these numbers and adding this up and, well, what do we want to spend here and there? But really what we found is once you get into it, we've got a pretty good routine down now that we don't have to spend a lot of time actively managing it or focusing it on a regular basis. That being said, we're both project managers by nature. So we like doing this stuff and we like playing around with numbers and spreadsheets and all that kind of thing. But no,
you're both nerds.
100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we use YNAB. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's a pretty popular tool out there.
Right. So spell it for anybody who's going to be listening to this.
It's called YNAB, and it stands for You Need a Budget.
Oh, you need a budget. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I started on it. I always did the trial. I did the trial like twice.
Okay.
It's the best budget program out there. I could never pick it up. I just never really got a grasp of it.
It is complicated. You are absolutely right there. I had a friend of mine actually jump on Zoom with me and walk me through it because I got to that same point and I just could not figure it out. But once you get past it, I'm sold. I am totally a believer in it and I love it. So we use that for our day-to-day budgeting. And then we also have a Google spreadsheet dashboard that I had bought from another Fire account on Instagram. And at the end of every month, I plug all of our numbers in there. And that gives us kind of our bigger picture overall running total of just how our finances are shaping up that year. If we're on track to hit our savings goals, if we're falling behind, if our expenses all of a sudden are seeming like they were way higher than I was expecting. So I review that at the end of every month. And then we're actually in the next few weeks going to do like a mid-year check-in here just to say, okay, how's everything looking and where are we? And then at the end of the year, we usually sit down together too. But other than that, it pretty much just is a process that kind of runs itself at this point. And I will add on to that. I think part of that is because Jeff and I are so frugal by nature. We tend to save. We don't really tend to spend. And when we do, it typically is a lot of conversations of, should I really spend the money on this? I want it, but I don't know. And we kind of have to encourage each other to spend money, I guess. So in that sense, it probably makes our budgeting a little bit easier too.
Certainly.
So you're like the opposite of, a married couple where both of them are just crazy spenders and they have to, convince themselves to stop spending. That's a good thing. I guess, people talk about balance or whatever. So that's if you're going to be on one end of the spectrum, I think it's a little better to be a hardcore saver than be a hardcore spender. So
probably, but I will say I feel like it's budgeting that really helped to take away a lot of that guilt from me.
Yes.
I need to be saving. Like, I'm tired. I really want to just order out tonight, but I need to cook instead. Once we had a budget there in place, I could look at it and say, we've got this much money scheduled to eat out this month. We can do it.
Yeah.
And it for me personally, it just gave me a lot more of a sense of calm and security and freedom, knowing I've got everything covered. Even
Yes.
though neither of us have ever overspent in our bank accounts, like we've never gotten to that point. It wasn't until we started doing the zero-based budgeting that I really felt like, okay, I know where every dollar is going, and I have absolute faith that we are okay. So now I'm okay to spend this money and not feel bad about it.
That is incredible. That's awesome to hear, because, even where we are right now, one thing we struggle with is the budget, right? So, I have been pretty habitual and notorious for ridiculous grocery budget. So we have 3 growing kids, and I can't give my wife $25 a month for a grocery budget. That's ridiculous, right? So I'm trying to loosen up a little bit there, and the budget is always less than we actually need. I haven't perfected that yet. So
Sure.
I'll probably get your code for you need a budget.
There you go.
Yeah. So one thing I have noticed, so I've been seeing your net worth updates, and then yesterday I asked you, hey, is your net worth 865? And you said no, I need to update it. It's 909. So I'm noticing that your net worth is just growing at ridiculous speeds, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of break down your net worth and just how, what is it what's it constituted of?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'd say historically for me, coming as, a single guy, whatever, back to the tools, I was always using Mint and that sort of thing. So once I became debt free, my next path was to then focus on not just saving money, but putting it towards something, using vehicles to try to earn some wealth. And so a concerted focus and effort on me is always maximizing 401k every year, is maximizing IRA contributions. Those were kind of my standards. And then, so that's, for me, when I came into our marriage, those were my primary modes of investment. And since then, we've, especially over the last year and a half, have been really focusing on, and Kelly mentioned, one is our brokerage accounts, and really focusing on more so the index funds, if you will, side of, S&P 500, the total stock market index, if you will, in which is, your more conservative approach, but it's the steady climb, if you will. So those are the 3 main areas that I'd say we focus is really our brokerage account, and then, but within that, a couple different vehicles that Kelly can cover, and then we don't do as much as cherry picking stocks and trying to play the market. We're much more, like I said, stable and tried and true types of investments. And so we do have dabbled in that a little bit when we have some stock splits that look attractive, maybe some Apple and Tesla when they do some type of stock split special or those types of things. And we're scratching the surface on whether the Bitcoin of the world, whether the cryptocurrency is for us or not. But I'd say that overall those tried and true vehicles when it comes to company-based investments, 401k, IRA, private and company, as well as brokerage accounts is the primary areas that I'd say I focused, and then we've been focusing on in the last couple of years.
Yeah. And, I think we've seen so much growth this year because we consistently stuck with it last year when it was so scary and we were putting in money and seeing no growth and sometimes even dipping. But if you hold it and you wait for the long run, that's when you really see some of the rewards start to come into play. So yeah, this year it's been exciting. Last year was not as exciting to watch, but this year it's been a lot more fun. And
if you have that money sitting around, last year was exciting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could pour more into it, especially with brokerage accounts. I mean, so let's say you're one of those January 2nd individuals who max your Roth IRA or individual IRA out on January 2nd, and then the market dips in March, April. Well, of course you can't add anything else, but if you're just doing it through a brokerage account, you can add whatever you want.
Yeah.
Downtime. So well, let me guess, VTSAX.
Yep.
That's the primary one. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I have all of my Roth and all of my 403B for both my wife and I. Those are all in VTSAX. And our 457, they don't have VTSAX available, but whatever the ticker is for the Vanguard 500 index, that's what we do. So we're huge fans of the index, and we got that from JL Collins. I mean,
yes, same here. Yep. Simple Path to Wealth, which we were talking about earlier. That's basically what we read that kickstarted us off on all this. But the other piece I was going to add for our net worth too is that when we got married, I owned my own home and Jeff owned his too. So I ended up selling mine last year and we dumped all of that into index funds, which helped a lot as well. And I also owned a rental property. So that's also part of our net worth now is our primary home here and then our one rental property that we have. And I'm sure you're probably aware of the real estate market has just been skyrocketing right now. So I include the Zillow estimate in our net worth as well, because right now things are selling for even way above the Zillow estimate. So I feel like it's a pretty safe and conservative number to include in there as well. But again, that could change. Who knows what next year could bring.
Okay, that's great that you said that. So like I said, I'm a school administrator, but I'm also a realtor.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a primary buyer's realtor.
Okay.
And it's super frustrating right now for buyers, but
so you're familiar.
Oh, absolutely. I have a listing right now that got an offer in 3 hours. So I'm like, hey, it's pretty sweet being a listing agent right now.
Yeah, it is. We've been tossing around the idea of getting another rental property for the past few months, but
we've actually tried. Yeah,
we have tried, but everything just goes so quickly right now that it's just really, really challenging.
Yeah, I totally understand. So you're each maxing out a 401k, correct?
Yes, we actually at my work just started offering a 401k this year, and I was excited because I was kind of the one that pushed and spearheaded that. So that was
awesome.
A huge accomplishment for me. I felt like if I do nothing else this year, I'm just excited by that alone. So yes, we are both now maxing those out.
That's incredible. And so then the rest, you basically every extra dime you get, you just throw in a regular brokerage account and pay the taxes for that year.
Correct. We're doing our IRAs as well. So we each also max out an IRA.
A Roth or individual?
Roth.
So Roth. And then previously, so prior to the 401k, Kelly had the simple IRA through her work as well.
Yes. Which is similar. We do the backdoor Roth process. So it is a Roth IRA, but a few extra steps there.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah. And I know that there are tons of information out there about how to do a backdoor Roth once you get over that certain income limit. You're like, it's obviously great when you minimize your, taxable income so that you can invest in a Roth up front. But once you get to a certain point, like you have to do a backdoor Roth. So that's pretty incredible that you're doing.
Yeah. And one other account I'll throw out there that we're not using now, but I was using before we were married is the HSA. And that's an awesome, amazing option out there for just tax benefits. I honestly don't know if you can beat it as far as just like the tax benefits and growth opportunities and stuff like that go. So I still have mine. Our plan there is to just hold it and wait until we reach retirement age and use it as an IRA at that point. So we do have it there in case we need anything for medical expense related items. It stands for Health Savings Account for anyone who might not be familiar. But that's not our plan to use it for that right now unless we absolutely have to.
Yeah, and that's great you talk about the HSA. We actually have an HSA as well. I choose the high deductible plan and do the HSA and max it out. Unfortunately, we've been doing it for years. And unfortunately, we have 3 kids. We have one with asthma. So the first 5 years of the HSA, we would spend it all every year. So we didn't get the triple tax benefits of it. But a lot of people do say that the HSA is actually more powerful than the Roth IRA because of the triple tax benefit rather than the double tax benefit.
Absolutely.
So I would definitely encourage anybody, if you can, to max out your HSA every single year and don't touch it. Save your receipts. That's the issue I'm dealing with right now. It's so hard to save receipts. I'm not good at that.
Yeah, we've got a Google folder, so we just take a photo and upload it immediately there. So we've got them all.
So you take the picture and it automatically uploads it.
I do it from the app and then I send it directly into our Google Drive folder so that we have it all there.
That is awesome.
That's one concept we've talked about. If we were still doing the HSA, it would be kind of that balance between have a medical procedure, let's say $1,000 hit this year on something medical, rather than pulling it out of the HSA. See if we can pay for it out of pocket and then keep the money in the HSA to grow and then save those receipts type of thing, like you said. So that's not always conducive, of course, because medical expenses can be exorbitant and can be not planned and hit you pretty hard. But ideally, in the situation, that's what we've been trying to do is hold the HSA and keep it at bay and pay out of pocket for the other stuff.
Because it's great. Because we know if we're able to just pay out of pocket now and down the road we get in a tight spot, we just submit that receipt and we can always reimburse ourselves later.
Awesome. Well, I know you're pretty transparent. You know, obviously talking about net worth. Do you care to share salaries or anything?
Sure. Yeah. So our salary breakdown is mostly just our two main jobs and then our rental income, and our total between all three of those, I think, is probably around $250,000 a year.
Awesome.
And then we have little odd things here and there that we do. I don't like to have a lot of stuff around the house, so I'm big into getting rid of everything, and I sell it all on Facebook Marketplace whenever I can. So there's little other bits here and there that come into play, but in general, that's right around where we are.
So would I be correct in assuming that you're a minimalist?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. So I'm slowly trying to get my family to transition into minimalism. It's difficult with 3 kids because they just want to buy things, you know. But I think the one concept, and you probably have heard about it, but it's the Hedonic Treadmill. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't actually.
Well, so we have a nice house right now, right? So we have, for the last 4 or 5 years, we go window shopping for new houses, and we've been always wanting to upgrade every year. But then I think about the Hedonic Treadmill, and it's something that one of my buddies introduced me to, did my research. And it's basically where, you know, everybody has a baseline of happiness. And you can go out and buy a Mercedes-Benz, you can buy a brand new house. After a few weeks, that happiness wears off and you're right back to the same exact point where you were.
Yeah.
So now you're always trying to chase that high that you had, and you never can. You know, you can, but it only is going to stay there for a short amount of time. So is the happiness that you establish for a couple of weeks or a couple of months going to be worth the long-term mortgage payment or a car payment? And obviously the answer is no. So if you think in those terms, then it's easy to say no. So now I'm turning down every single big purchase because I know that it's not going to make me a happier person than I am right now. So if people can really think about a hedonic treadmill when they're, you know, thinking about their finances, I think it can change the world, just like minimalism, you know?
Yeah.
Why buy a bunch of stuff you don't need?
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for us, both as individuals and as a couple too, is really, I guess, knowing what we want and knowing what we don't want and that sort of thing. And so those conversations were key for us up front. And once again, we really luckily line up with that, because not everybody does. But we really line up with where we want to spend our money and where we want to put it. But yeah, for us, that kind of knowing how we want to spend it and where we want to spend it is really foundational for our happiness in general. Because if that's the balance, as you talked about earlier too, as well as if we both really love spending in this category, let's say we really want a fancy car and that we really treasure and value that, and that brings either happiness or peace or whatever to us. If it's balancing on the other side, okay, where are we going to compensate for that? And so that for us, that's not, we're, as the minimalism concept, you know, things aren't as much as the attraction there. But it's that balance. We do have things that we love. Travel is a huge one. So we spend a lot more on travel, even granted we hack and we do all those things to keep our costs lower than average. But that's where we spend our money. And so it's a matter of what we really enjoy. And that's the conversation we really always encourage, is people just talk and say, where are you at, where I'm at, where are we comfortable spending our money and cutting back in other areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. You know, one piece of advice my mom gave me was that when you die, all you have are really memories. You know, when you get older, and we want to build memories with our kids traveling, like Disney. We're going on an 8-day cruise in December. So you know, we said, if there's anything that we're going to splurge on, it's going to be traveling. So that's one reason why I definitely want to talk about this travel hacking now. Tell me a little bit about that. Let me tell you what came in the mail for me today.
Oh, let's see it.
This is the
Aviator.
Yeah, the Aviator. So I went on a trip to Orlando over the last weekend, and my wife and I both were able to apply for it's like 60,000 points. And on that flight, they waived the $99 for a year, and they give you you get 500 extra. So it's like 60,500 points. You go there's no minimum spend. All you gotta do is buy a pack of gum.
Yep.
That can get you to Europe and back. So I was like, wow, this is crazy, you know? So tell us about your travel hacking.
Yeah. So I was once started travel hacking first, and I've been doing that for probably about 7 years now. And everyone basically always has the same initial reaction of this is either crazy or illegal, or you're going to ruin your finances, or a combination of all of the above. So when we first started dating, I was pushing it hardcore, and I said, you got to do this. Like, we can go all over the place. And Jeff was a little bit hesitant at the beginning. But it was only a couple months, and then you jumped on board, and we started going places, and you haven't stopped since then.
Yeah. And for me, it's something I kind of in my peripheral, like I'd always been interested in travel hacking and that sort of thing, but I never pulled the trigger on it. I never jumped into it because of kind of those stigmas around it. Oh man, my credit score is going to crash, all these sorts of things. Oh man, if I don't do it right, I'm just going to get in debt and that sort of thing. So those things kind of looming over me just kept me from jumping into it. I'm kind of a reserved, conservative person as far as risk. So I kept it bay, but Kelly showed me the numbers. She showed me her credit score. She showed me how many cards she has. She showed me what she's been able to save and ultimately earn because of travel hacking. And I was sold. And since then, I look in the rearview mirror the last 2 years since she's opened me up to it. And I wish I would have been doing it my entire life.
I need to do like a grand total of how much I've saved by doing this. But the last time I tried to do a rough estimate, it was around $70,000 that I've saved by doing it. So
in the last decade,
in the last 7 years,
7 years,
not even full decade.
Wow.
So I mean, that's
incredible.
That's a pretty good, I feel like, side hustle there. If I'm in essence earning, $10,000 a year from it, I'm going to keep doing that, I think.
That's incredible. So, there are some people here that don't know what travel hacking is. So if you can just give a simple description of travel hacking, in addition to kind of explaining just some of the major travel hacks that you have done.
Sure. Yeah. So overall, at a high level, all that travel hacking is finding ways to travel for cheap. And the primary way to do that is with credit cards. And if you look at all of the different credit card offers out there, like the one that you just showed, oftentimes they will give you some sort of a sign-on bonus for airline miles or hotel points or other things like that are 50,000 miles or 60,000 or sometimes even higher. And as you get into it, you'll learn that airlines have very set and standard numbers of miles to get from destination A to B. So as you alluded to get from the United States to Europe on American Airlines, it is 30,000 miles there and 30,000 miles back in business, or I'm sorry, not in business, in economy. So all you need is one card with 60,000 miles on it, and you just got yourself a free flight. Yep. So for me, it all came down to the numbers of saying, okay, if there's $100 annual fee on it, sometimes that can push people away, and they're like, well, I don't want to pay for that. That's $100 out of my pocket. But I looked at that and said, well, how much would a flight to Europe cost me? That would cost a lot more than $100. So in my head, that makes it worth it. And what you can do is end up what we call churning. And it basically means just constantly signing up for a card, earning that bonus, signing up for another card, earning that bonus, and just rinse and repeat. And it sounds sketchy to some people at first, and I get it. It is, because I grew up being taught the same thing. Like, you don't use credit cards. They can get you in trouble and things like that. And my parents were never against credit cards, so it wasn't that aspect of it. But they were always, telling me to be responsible and careful with my money. So my disclaimer is always, if you want to get into credit card hacking at all, you have to make sure that you're going to treat it like a debit card and pay off that full balance every month, because the interest rates, they're insane, and they cancel out any kind of rewards that you're going to be trying to earn from that. So if you don't feel that you are in a place where you can control your spending enough, it's probably not the time to start on it. But if you are already pretty decent with finances and you don't really struggle with trying to make payments on things each month, then why not do that? Earn something on spending that you're already going to do. And that's how we do it. We don't ever go out and buy anything that we wouldn't already use just to meet a spending requirement on a card. I would say probably on average, the most common is about 50,000 miles to sign up for, and maybe spending $3,000 in the first 3 months or something like that. Just on average, they change a lot. Yeah. But when you look at it, $3,000 can sound like a lot of money. But what we'll do is, if we get to that point where we realize we're getting towards the end of those 3 months and we haven't spent that much yet, we'll go out and we'll just buy gift cards to the grocery store.
Yeah.
As long as you can plan ahead and you're not having to live exactly paycheck to paycheck, you know you're going to need groceries next month and the month after that. You're going to spend that money anyway. So just buy those gift cards now and put it on the credit card to get that charge to go through, and then use those gift cards for the next few months. And we'll do that sometimes with gas too. You know, typically most people go to the same gas station close to your house all the time. Mm-hmm. So buy a gift card there as well and do the same thing. There's a lot of different ways to be creative with it, but that's primarily what we do. So we really, now these days, we never pay for flights anywhere.
That's incredible.
And it's opened the doors. We wouldn't be traveling like we do if it was not for this. That's for sure.
Yeah, and what Kelly alluded to, and there's a hack within the hack, if you will, sometimes too, because these credit cards will offer 5 times bonus points for gas stations, whatever. And there's where you can, like I said, hack within a hack, where you can say, oh, I'm going to buy gift cards to not only meet my spending, but then also get 5 times the miles that I normally would. So there's, you can get as deep into it as you want. And there's all kinds of stuff out there. People find little fine-tuned backdoors and things. It's the whole community of Fire is really knowledge sharing about that.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting piece of it, but on a tangent there, it could go.
But start out small. Like just get exactly. One card to start with, and then go from there. We're now deep into it and highly organized with it all. But you don't be scared away by that. You can start out slow and see if it works.
Exactly. And so that's the thing. I can tell, because I've gone through that path from, Kelly's the professional at this, and I was the novice. So she's taught me I was the apprentice here. She's taught me along the way. But yeah, I started out with a Chase credit card that Kelly had recommended. Those typically have really good rewards and benefits that can be applied broad strokes and travel between airlines and that sort of thing. So I started with a Chase Freedom card, and there are some specific ones that Kelly can talk to, but there's kind of a base level. Chase is one of the biggest banks that we have affinity towards, but you name it, I've had it the last few years, and I can comfortably say I haven't paid for a flight since then. So regarding your other part of the question, as far as the biggest kind of hack, we've done maybe 80,000-90,000 points, I think, something like that for those types of cards, because we've now recently, because of the rental property, been able to get to the business side of cards. So rather than just having personal credit cards, being able to use our business to be able to obtain, and those have higher rewards, often higher sign-up bonuses. Recently, I think I saw one for 120,000 miles, something like that, which higher spending up front, but undoubtedly there's opportunities there. It's just a matter of what the individual is comfortable with, what they can achieve, but going back to those foundations of using it as a credit card and only for purchases that you were already planning to spend.
Yeah. And I know my biggest hack, my favorite one, I guess I should say, was flying to Thailand, because that's a really, really long flight, and getting to fly in business class. And there is no way I would ever be able to do that on my own. Like I think I added up, and the ticket was going to be like $8,000 or something like that. So there's no way I would ever spend the money on that. Yeah. But having enough points and miles saved up to be able to do that was incredible. And having a complete bed that could lay flat. So by the time I got there, I had like a full night's sleep on right under my belt, and I could hit the ground running pretty much. So just some things like that just, I never would have dreamed I'd ever be able to do that travel hacking is allowed.
Wow. Yeah. I tell people all the time, like I see people complaining about other people who have like 100 or 200 credit cards. I'm like, just having a credit card doesn't mean you have debt. Like,
right. Oh yeah. We've never carried a balance. We pay everything off every month.
That's awesome. And like you said, I say that literally word for word, the exact same thing. If you use the card to spend on something you were going to spend on anyway, just like a debit card, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Right.
It's like you're paying 98% of what somebody else is paying 100% for. On some of these cards, even 95%.
Exactly.
So my only issue with Chase is that I cannot get under the 524.
Yeah, I feel you there, man. Yeah. It's painful. It's a long process to wait for.
I've been in that boat recently, just waiting and waiting. I'm waiting for that last card to drop off so I can go to 4 for 424.
I think I got to like 21 months one time, and then it was just like a crazy churning offer I couldn't turn down.
Yep. We go through the same thing here.
Well, that's awesome. So now, if you want to speak about FIRE. So are you looking more to retire early, or are you like, do you have a number in mind? Oh, just tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. We don't have a hard number right now. That's mostly because it's just the two of us, and we eventually do want to have kids. And we play around with our numbers and estimates and things like that. But I feel like it's kind of pointless to try and estimate that before having children, just because we don't know when that will happen. We don't know if one of those kids is going to have a lot of medical issues that's going to, totally change our finances or something like that. So right now, our main focus is mostly just on our savings rate. Our goal is always to be saving at least 50% of our income every single month. And I feel like as long as we do that and we keep consistently saving and investing our money and putting it into all the index funds, we're feeling pretty good with that right now.
Awesome. Jeff, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's really a lot the same. So, our focus has been, just put it away. We do have a number in mind. Okay, we're trying to calculate things. We're saying, okay, we could maybe retire in 15 years, type of thing, if you will. And so we've been trying to do the conservative approach and say, okay, if we have couple $1 million in the bank type of thing, and we want to spend 4% a year, how can we do that and balance out, and do the calculations, if you will, and say, okay, if we're truly going to retire in 50 years, which is age 50 for me, okay, if I'm planning to live another 30 years, how can we do that? So there has been a lot of those calculations and conversations, but yeah, we don't have, like Kelly said, a hard, fast number or deadline that we're sprinting towards. But in general, it is the financial independence is really the drive for both of us, but the retire early is also a drive. And that retire early piece for us, well, I'll speak for myself, could mean different things. It could mean I'm done working, if you will, at age 50, let's say that would happen. And I'm kicking back and I'm watching Netflix every day. I don't know what I'm doing. But in reality for us, we both are active people. We both do enjoy we have different side things that obviously Kelly mentioned, her reviews work. I do some stuff with Engineers Without Borders. There's different kind of side volunteer happenings. So could be maybe we work a part-time job and then we volunteer the other time, or maybe we volunteer full-time. So that kind of, once again, the family piece of it, we'll have, understandably, hopefully kids by that time. Those different dynamics of what the future lays for us is still in question. But in general, when people hear, I think at least people we've talked to in the past, and they say, "Oh, you want to retire early? Then what?" type of thing, like. Yeah. Life's over, if you will, type of thing. And that's not the way, I guess, our mindset is. We look at it as the independence to be able to kind of choose our path forward. Maybe that is continue working a 40-hour week at our current job. Maybe it's any of those things that I just mentioned.
I was going to add, the good thing is we both really enjoy our jobs. Mm-hmm. Like we work for really great companies. We like the people that we work with. So neither of us have that drive of like, oh, I just cannot wait to leave this and be done, So mm-hmm. So we're very, very fortunate in that. But yeah, what Jeff said earlier, I spend a lot of time doing my volunteer work. Yes. And I love it, and I can't keep up. I mean, there's just so much need for it out there. So I am really excited to just be able to get to that point where we don't have to worry about income, and instead we can just focus on giving back. Even more than we're able to now. So that and travel are the big things I'm excited for. But we've also talked about other things too. For example, I was actually homeschooled growing up, and that's something we've talked about maybe considering with our kids someday. And so that would be great to be in a position where we could do that as well. But yeah, a lot of things just kind of up in the air.
I could certainly appreciate that. My reason for FI isn't necessarily money driven, right? It's to provide choices and options.
Exactly.
I mean, I absolutely love what I do. Like anybody who knows me knows I love working with kids on a daily basis, but I don't like when the alarm goes off at 5:30. So I want to sleep until like 8 o'clock. So they will provide options. And, if you want to go volunteer at a school or be a crossing guard a few days a week, you can do that, So.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to add too was I think part of the motivation for the financial independence part for me was that the past couple of jobs I've had before my current position both of those companies went through layoffs. And I was actually never laid off, but once it happened, I knew I needed to start looking. And I'm sure if I hadn't started looking and left, I probably would have been in that boat at some point. And so that really freaked me out because, as Jeff mentioned earlier, we both are pretty risk averse people. And so I just did not want to be in that position where I could be at my job one day and the next day find out I didn't have it anymore and be stressed about finances. So that's always been kind of a big driver for me of just wanting to save in general. So once I found out about financial independence, it just clicked. And I said, oh, this just makes so much sense to me.
It definitely makes so much sense. And if you can just sock away as much, like I tell my kids right now, if you can save 50% of every dollar you ever earn for the rest of your life, you will be a millionaire in a heartbeat. Like it's not going to take that long. And it looks like you all are right there. Like I just see your net worth just continuing to rise so rapidly. And like I said earlier, personal finance is personal. So sometimes we have people that are 50 years old and they're complaining because their net worth is $100,000. Then you have people who are, 25 years old who are have $1 million net worth. So I just try to tell people all the time, hey, just take your journey. It's never too late to start on a journey to FI or to financial independence or retiring early, whatever, however you look at it. Just do your best. I see that question all the time. Yep, I'm 52 years old and I have nothing saved for retirement. Well, you're not getting younger. So just start saving, today. The best day to start was yesterday. The second best day is today. So if you were to give a newlywed couple some tips, some of your own steps on how to become financially independent or just to get the ball rolling, what would you say?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is when we got engaged, before we even sat down to do any wedding planning, we sat down and went over all of our finances. And that's exactly when we started. We opened up our brokerage account and we said, okay, let's start combining this and get our plan together here. So not that everyone has to follow that path, but just realize how big of a deal it is and how much that changes your life when you have two people involved instead of just one. And I think the biggest thing for me is just wanting to make sure that whenever we do our budgeting, that it's a very collaborative session. It's not me coming in and saying like, Jeff, you need to cut down on your spending in this area. And I got to figure out how to lower our grocery bill each month or this or that. Like, it's very collaborative of saying like, I think we need to consider increasing it here. I think we could cut back here. What are you comfortable with? What am I comfortable with? And just very much being a partnership with it.
Yeah, and for me, it seems so simple. It seems too simple, if you will, of an answer, which is communication. It builds on what Kelly said, which is that collaboration. Where it starts is communication. And so once again, luckily, we really lined up. It's easy for us to be transparent, talk to each other about finances, this and that. It's often a taboo subject for not just people, person to person, strangers, even within families, within marriages, you name it. It's a subject that not all people enjoy or relish or even want to talk about with each other. But opening up that dialogue, that line of communication is my biggest piece of advice because, just in a relationship period, whether when it becomes serious or whatever step you want it to be, but definitely ahead of becoming married, get engaged, that type of thing. It is very important because when I look at us in those conversations, we really lined up, but we could have not lined up in a lot of things, and that's fine. But at least we could have set the roadmap for, hey, how do we plan for this for the future? If I wanted to spend in a totally different way, I want to every dollar comes in, I want to get it out the door type of thing. It's having those conversations and getting back to that balance and compromise and starting working on those conversations up front as early as possible to avoid some big things hanging out there, some surprises that you don't know about, some differences of opinions that can be kind of deal breakers, if you will, for those. So once again, it seems so simple. It's silly, but communication. Yeah.
And the other thing that comes to my mind too is you asked specifically about like a couple coming together and how do they work through it. And for me, when we got married or engaged or whatever, that was the very first time in my life I'd ever had that dual income experience. And I think lifestyle creep can be a very real thing when that happens. And, and to clarify what that means, that's basically just as you start making more money, you start feeling like, okay, I can start spending more, and how to combat that. Because up till that point, I had never had another person there earning with me and also contributing to it. And so that was a big shift and a big eye opener. So knowing just how to go about that, and just because you might be doubling your income or increasing it in some way doesn't mean you have to now double all your expenses. It really gives you so much of an advantage to have two incomes. And I think that's always important to point out with the two of us. There's a lot of people out there pursuing FIRE on their own as a single person. And I'm just amazed at what they're able to do with all of that, because having two people is such a huge help. So if you can do it on your own, you're way farther ahead than either of us are.
Yeah. Well, I think the lifestyle creep thing is so important. I mean, because I've seen people get raises, but they actually, it's a decrease in pay when they get a $500 a month raise, then they go get a $800 a month truck payment that they didn't have before. So yes, actually it would have been better off not getting a raise in the first place, you know? So, but, you know, having somebody who's been married coming up on 16 years, I can clearly see you two are like connected, and the chemistry is obvious, it's real. And, you know, children change relationships. They just change the dynamic. But I am confident that whenever that happens in your life, you know, a year, 5 years from now, you all will make a seamless transition. You will do the best you can. And it's obvious because you two get along so well right now. So
we'll see. We both really, really love our sleep. So we'll see.
Absolutely. I texted a buddy of mine last night at about 7 o'clock. He texted me back this morning and said, man, I went to sleep early. Like they have a newborn, so they have to sleep with the baby.
Yeah.
You know, and, that is the biggest knock against kids.
Yeah, we appreciate your vote of confidence there. Yeah, but we'll gladly take it. Yeah.
But you know, so I know earlier, Kelly, that you mentioned contacting you if somebody had any questions or anything. Do you want to get that information out?
Yeah. Yep. So our Instagram page is just at fireroundtheworld, all one word there. And yeah, you can feel free to reach out and send me a DM there. I haven't been as active on it lately because we've actually been traveling. We just got back from a trip a few days ago. But I'm still very active in a lot of abuse work and some support groups and things like that. So if you have questions related to that, I'm happy to share resources. And if you have questions about budgeting or how to open an IRA or fund it, or what is travel hacking, where do I even start, or what card should I get? I love having those conversations. So I welcome whatever questions come.
And it should be noted, so Kelly is not just the brainchild behind Fire Around the World. She started it is and still is a side hobby. It's, you know, not looking at to just get in the community and share knowledge and learn things and that sort of thing is really, I'd say, the drivers behind the page. But undoubtedly, yeah, she's the content creator, she's the orchestrator, she is it all. So she is the guru. So yeah, and she's always happy to help out. But it's also a passion of mine. I'm just not directly active in that sense. But together we are. But yeah, Kelly's the leader there.
I bounce the questions off him in the background and then come back with answers.
Here's not to do based on what my response is. Yeah.
Well, my last question for you: are you going to FinCon this year in Austin?
No plans for it right now.
Okay.
I'll say for me, at least, the last year with COVID and not being able to get out and travel was so frustrating. So I'm just excited now to get out and go places. So that's Absolutely. Our big focus right now, is to travel as much as we can with that.
And it's interesting because, you know, when we spoke with Meet the Power Couple, it really kind of turned my head. We've been actively involved in this community for FIRE, that is, and it's been awesome. Everybody's been great, helpful, friendly. You know, it's people such as yourself that's just out there to talk to people, knowledge share, learn, and just connect. And so Meet the Power Couple mentioned that, you know, they've going to conferences and that sort of thing, and it's something I can say we'd enjoy to do. We don't plan on it this year, but one of these days.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely look forward to meeting you at one of these conferences one day, and I'll definitely be continuing to follow your journey. I cannot wait until the day that I see the 2 commas in net worth. So I know it's coming soon. It's going to be sooner than later. Yeah. And if any married couple or anybody who's thinking about getting married, they watch this 1-hour video once it is uploaded, I think that they will be, you know, in for a treat. It's textbook. This is how married couples should approach finances, and if they do, they will be highly successful regardless of their income level. So I commend you, Jeff and Kelly. Keep up the great work, and we will definitely be in touch. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure. You all be safe out there. Okay.
All right, take care.
And
as
you
well.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.